Hello and welcome back to my channel. I am so glad you decided to click on this video today. So like the title says, today I'm going to be doing my May wrap up. So May was a pretty good month for me quantity wise. I read 17 books and I would say it wasn't necessarily quality-wise the best month, but I did get through a good bit of books that I've been wanting to read. So even if they didn't pan out as I had hoped, they are still off my TBR. So I am gonna try to do this quickly so that this video isn't forever long. So let's get started with my first read of May. First book that I read and, mostly just finished in the month of May was The Great Believers by Rebecca Mackay. This is an unpopular opinion, but I gave this 2 stars. I listened to the audiobook, and this is a very, very beloved book among many people. This is kind of just a portrait of a group of friends who are mainly gay and are kind of dealing with the beginning of the AIDS crisis in the 1980s, and they're in Chicago and just a lot. So that part of it was really powerful. But honestly, I just found it to be kind of boring. I didn't feel enough emotion to make up for the fact that the plot was losing me a little. There are like 2 parts of it. There's a timeline that's in 2015 and a timeline that's in, I think, 1985. So yeah, it just wasn't really what I wanted out of it. And I definitely appreciate the subject matter, and I would love to see another novel based around the AIDS crisis and how much nobody cared, nobody in power cared, that people were dying in such high numbers from this disease. So anyways, it just wasn't the vibe for me, but again, would love to read more on the subject. The next 2 I'm not going to go too heavy into because I did talk about them in my best books of the year so far. But the first one is A Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren. I gave this 5 stars and I read the physical book. This was just the best rom-com. It was so funny. It was just adorable. This is their newest book, and it kind of follows a marriage of convenience situation where the 2 folks in the marriage don't really know each other well, and a lot like money is involved with this, and we're going to fake date at a sibling's wedding, and they're very, very rich. And so it was really fun. It was funny. There was a lot of chemistry, and I really loved the main female character, Anna. She just was a great character. The next book I read was Rainbow Black by Maggie Thrash. This got 5 stars from me, and I read the physical book. I can't even explain how much I loved this. It was just like the perfect balance of like literary fiction with like thriller, I guess. It was just, I loved it. It was kind of set in the time of the Satanic Panic. This girl whose parents get arrested for molesting children, they run a daycare, but it's mostly involved because they're kind of like hippie, whatever, but everyone's going a little nuts. And so it's basically how this girl, she's like 12, how she like finds her way when her parents are both in prison. Then we fast forward and we get her as an adult. And this reminded me a lot of Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. If you like her books, I think this would be a good one to pick up because it's definitely a similar vibe where it's like there's way more drama and like tension versus like thriller, but there's a little of each. So this is, yeah, definitely a great one. Really good queer rep if you're looking for a queer book to read for Pride Month. Next, I read The Book of Essie by Megan McLean Ware. I gave this 3 stars and I read it on an ebook. This was okay. This was okay for me. I thought the premise sounded so good. It's about this girl who grows up in this church family, and they're on TV a la like the Duggars. And she is 16 or 17 and she ends up pregnant. And so her family, is on TV, and she's trying to deal with the producers, and they're like, well, you must get married now. We have to like work this into the story, whatever. and kind of just how that all plays out. And I thought the premise was really good. I love any books about like reality shows or like influencers and all of that. But this just like the ending just got a little crazy for me. And I don't want to say crazy even. It just wasn't the vibe that it didn't go in the direction I thought it was going, and I found the direction that it did go just like to be okay. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but I was entertained. Next, I read The Glass Hotel by Emily St. John Mandel. This listened to the audiobook, and I gave this 4 stars. So I actually did this as a buddy read with Leandra the TBR Zero. I will link her channel down below. And she and I have loved this author in the past, and neither of us had read this book by her. So we decided to do it as a buddy read, and it was a really, really fun time. It's really hard to explain the premises of her writing. It's very much like, just go with it. It'll make sense. Just keep going. So, I mean, basically this follows a long time span of this one woman's life and different events and things that she lives through. I don't know how else to explain it any more in depth, but it was really good. We both really, really liked it. There were a lot of like callbacks to like crossover in different books. So that was really cool. And all the credit for noticing those goes to Leandra, because I was like, I don't even remember this happening in that book, because I don't know, I just have a terrible memory. So yeah, that was really good, really fun time to read that together. Next, I read The Mysterious Case of the Alperton Angels. This is by Janice Hallett. I gave this 3 stars, and I read the physical book. This was like actually a book I was so excited about. So this past December, I read 2 other books by this author that were called The Appeal and The Christmas Appeal. I think that was the name of the second one. Anyways, they were both really fun. They are written in an epistolary format, and I just really enjoy books like that. So I was super excited about this because it's about a woman who is a reporter trying to basically compete with this rival reporter over this story about this cult from several years earlier. And so I thought it was going to be something maybe a little different. It was I thought it was going to be more about like the cult, and it was more about these 2 people like competing for it. So it wasn't necessarily what I was expecting. It was good for what it was, but that wasn't what I went in hoping it would be. So I can't like say don't read it. It was fine, but it didn't go where I wanted it to. But if you like those kind of epistolary novels, check this one out, because I thought the way it's writing was really cool. And honestly, I'd actually say check out The Appeal, because that one was better. Next, I read Doorman Wanted by Glenn R. Miller. I read this physically. I gave it 3 stars. So this was about a man who inherits a ton of money from his father when he dies, and also this like skyscraper, whatever, apartment building in New York City. And he has kind of rejected his father's way of life the whole time he was alive. He has, comes from this super wealthy family, but he doesn't want to live like the billionaire lifestyle. So when he comes into all this money, he decides that like instead of coming forward and being like, yes, I'm the one that owns this building, he is gonna do all of his correspondence with the like maintenance and the front desk people and all of that through his lawyer, and he is gonna be the doorman and not tell anybody that he's actually the owner of the building. And so it was like a cute premise. I think it was a cuter premise than it was book. My book club actually picked this for the month of May, and honestly, I think I was the only one that actually finished it by book club. There wasn't much to really discuss, but since then, one of my friends from book club has finished and has like sent me some ranty texts. So yeah, I mean, it was okay. It was kind of entertaining, but there was some stuff that was like really questionable, the actions of the main character. It was also just a really simplified like look at, I don't know, homelessness, and I don't know, it felt very like white saviory and just kind of like a man with a hero complex who needs to calm down, and like the things that he was kind of doing to like give back were kind of surface level, and I just it was okay. Yeah, definitely not something I want to revisit. All right, speeding this up a little, the next book was Coming Home by Brittany Griner. I listened to the audiobook and I gave this 5 stars. We mostly, at least in the US, we know who Brittany Griner is. She's a WNBA star who was playing for a Russian basketball team and got arrested with a small amount of uh, THC, like pen cartridges. And she was treated horribly. She was just, it was horrible. And she did end up getting back to the United States, but it was a long process and she experienced some really terrible things over there. That was a hard read. I really, really enjoyed it. And I do generally like a celebrity memoir, but this was so interesting because it was about this specific event and she really, really focused on the specific event, I should say. Like, sometimes in memoirs, even if it is about that, you get so much backstory. And I mean, it's definitely important to know a person's beginnings to fully understand who they are. But there was like so much backstory in a lot of those. And she skipped right through all of that to the events of what is happening. And we get little bits here and there about how she grew up and her family and all of that. But it's like kind of interwoven with the things that are happening at the present time in the book. So I thought this was really well written and just a really, really interesting read. And I certainly had, I'd followed the case a little bit, but not a ton, but I did want to know more. So this was really, really great. Next I read Think Twice by Harlan Coben. I read the ebook and I gave it 3.5 stars, which kind of in retrospect seems like it might be generous. This is book number like 20 billion of the Myron Bolitar series. I honestly have only read like a couple of them here and there, and I honestly didn't realize that this was part of the series when I picked it up. So I don't know if that like did something. I feel like this character, yes, he's getting older, but he's really like turning into a like boomer, and some of the stuff that he says, I'm just like, yikes. So I don't know if I'm going to be reading any more of these books from this series. And yeah, the two main characters, the main one, Myron, and his friend slash associate, Win, they both kind of annoyed me in this book. So I don't know if I'm going to continue on with any books that contain those two characters because they're big ones for Harlan Coben. I don't know. The next book I read was Love Letters to a Serial Killer by Tasha Coriel. And I gave this 3 stars and I listened to the audiobook. So this is a book that I thought was going to be really clever and cute. Unfortunately, it was just like, okay. I don't know. Maybe I rated it too high with a 3. But I will say the majority of the book I was interested in. So this is about a woman whose life is just kind of stagnant, but she gets really into forums on the internet of like true crime fans. And so she gets invested in this one murder trial where this handsome young man named William, he is like a doctor or a lawyer or something, but he is being accused of murder. And so while he is waiting for his trial to begin, she writes him letters basically saying how angry she is about the violence against women and all of this stuff. And it's like a therapeutic thing, but then he writes back. And then like, it's not supposed to happen this way, but she like flips and all of a sudden she's like obsessed with him and how hot he is. And like, she's still interested in the fact that like he might have murdered people, but she also like wants to date him. So it's weird because it just like happens in a flash. And so then while he is like awaiting trial, another woman is murdered in the same sense that the others have been. It's like, okay, well, this can't be the guy because he was in prison. So in jail waiting his trial. And so they let him go. The main character then like moves in with him and is still trying to like find out if he's a murderer. So like that kind of just went a little too far for me. I'm like, okay, I can understand like charismatic serial killers and like how they could convince you that they are good guys or whatever, but like you're gonna move into the house with him? Like it was just it just we went too far, and yeah, I was done. So yeah, pretty average book, and I think that it was like a good idea. Just didn't pan out so well. Next, I read The Fellowship of Puzzle Makers by Samuel Burr. I gave this 4.5 stars, and I listened to the audiobook. So I've had this on my TBR for a while. It came out in April, but I've had an ARC copy of it since like February, and I didn't even read it until this month. So yikes. But I really enjoyed it. This is a really sweet and like feel good type of story. It gave me similar vibes, not a similar premise, but similar vibes to like The House in the Cerulean Sea. Found family of like weirdos, and they all have a common interest, and so that's like the vibes. The plot is that this little baby was left on the doorstep of this foundation, this fellowship of puzzle makers, and has basically been raised by the woman who founded this fellowship, but also like everyone, you know, there were tons of people. It takes a village, all of that. And so the woman that raised him, we're going back forward in time. The woman that raised him dies, and he is still trying to figure out like where did he come from and how did he come to end up at the fellowship. And so we go back and we get dual timelines with him trying to find out why he is there and like where he came from, how he came to be there, and how like the formation of the fellowship was started, and it you know, they intertwine. So I thought that was just, it was a really sweet, really cute story, and definitely worth reading. The next 3 books I am going to skip because you've heard about them already. The Guncle and The Guncle Abroad. I did a whole reading vlog that I will link down below if you are interested in checking that out and knowing my thoughts. And You Like It Darker, which I just posted a video of recently talking all about my thoughts on that, so I will also link that. So gonna skip those, but I did like all of those. Next, I read First Lie Wins by Ashley Elston. I listened to the audiobook. I gave this 4 stars. Overall, really, really good. This is a like con artist kind of book with like a female lead being like the con artist. She takes on these other identities and works for this mysterious man, Mr. Smith, and she ends up falling in love with one of her marks. And so yeah, you don't really need to know a ton about it going in. This is really twisty. I had a good time with it. I thought it was fun. I was definitely surprised in several different parts about the way things were like going with the twists. So I think even for thriller readers, if you like the con artist kind of vibe and a morally gray cast, because I don't think anyone in there was really fully a good guy, then definitely check this out. You will like it. Next, I finished Lula Dean's Little Library of Banned Books by Kirsten Miller. I gave this 2.5 stars, and I read the physical book. So I don't know if this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but this was just so, I don't know how to explain it. If it's like satire, but not really. It's like oversimplifying a real problem, and I think that's why I had a hard time connecting with it. It's about this little town in the South who, they're very conservative, they're very kind of traditional, and this woman, Lula Dean, is trying to get all these books banned from like, you know, the library and from the schools and all of that, and she's like, I'm gonna make this like little free library outside my house, and I'm gonna put these wholesome books in it. Well, someone comes and like changes all of the covers, so the like book cover is different than what is the actual book inside, and those are like books that are all banned books. And so people in the town are getting these and are like, this isn't whatever, and I just didn't think it was that good. I mean, I just don't think that the books that are in this thing would cause all of the things that are said to have happened. Yeah, I don't know. And a lot of the people in this town, like, I know what she's trying to like represent with each character, but it just felt like such an oversimplification of like a situation that requires a lot more I don't know, seriousness isn't the right word, but it just felt a little silly and like it was making a really serious issue into something like lighthearted and not recognizing that the things that happen in here are a reality for a lot of people. I know that probably doesn't make a lot of sense because I just don't want to like give away anything. There were also way too many characters. Like every chapter, we were like getting a new character. I couldn't really keep anyone straight except for like the couple core characters. Other than that, like I was just like, yeah, that sounds fine. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Not a book I'd recommend, but it was less than 300 pages, so at least I don't waste too much time on it. And the last book that I read in May was The Sea of Monsters by Rick Riordan. This I gave 4 stars to, and I read the physical book. This is the second book in the Percy Jackson series, and I thought it was great. This took me a little while to get through. I don't know why. I just was like not vibing with it at first, but I was like, I'm gonna finish this. I'm gonna continue the series. So I was pleasantly surprised when it picked up a little bit, and yeah, I really liked it. I'm looking forward to the next one, and my niece that I'm kind of reading these along with gave me her copies of them. So yeah, hoping to get through the next one in June. So those are all the books that I read. I also am about halfway through The Yankee Way by Andy Martino. I'm listening to the audiobook, although I do have a physical copy, and I am looking forward to finishing that up, but it will probably be counted towards my June goal. So I want to thank you so much for watching this. Let me know what your favorite book of May was. I am so excited. June has so many good releases coming out, and I just can't wait. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, I would love it if you would, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!